to steal information from the prisoner. They manipulate his mind.
So this is your wonder drug?
Yes. His mind is now yours. What do you want from it?
Why he resigned. I believe that he was going to sell out. I want to know what he had to sell and to whom he was going to sell it. Time for B.
She even looks like a spy.
He's a very good one from a long line of spies.
Tell him. He'll kill me.
I don't believe in you.
He'll kill me.
Watch this channel for the next exciting adventure of the prisoner.
No one will ever see me.
I will. I want to know who I'm selling out to.
Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. 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 What do you want? Information. What do you want? What do you want? Information. What do you want? Whose side are you on? What do you want? Information. What do you want? Information.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of Once Upon a Village, a Prisoner podcast. It's your number 2 here, John S. Drew speaking, and we're back in the village. We're back at Port Marion, although we don't know it's called Port Marion. We don't know where the village is located when it comes to the show. I don't know it, and neither does our own number 6 here, Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Who says that I don't know it?
Well,
that would be telling.
That would be telling. Well, you sort of fell for the old what was it, Lithuania, wasn't it, last week? With the
yeah, right. Yes, right on the Baltic Sea.
On the Baltic Sea.
Yeah.
This week we're going to be talking about the episode A, B, and C. And at first, it's funny because as I started watching it, I had to wonder, but then after a while I realized, no, this isn't true. I had to wonder if this was one of these episodes that they kind of like stole some inspiration from or tried to sort of, give you the warm feelings for Danger Man, because it takes place not literally, but on a dreamscape, I guess you could say, in, France, and there is the prisoner dressed in a tuxedo and all and doing his spy thing.
Yeah. We're on much more familiar ground as far as the spy milieu with this episode, or at least within the dream we are. Hey, I want to, if we can get this order of things out of the way.
Sure.
Yeah. It's continuing to bug me, and I'm sorry about this. This is actually the 11th episode produced.
See, there you go. That sort of lends to my idea that this may have been, a hey, let's take from here and because how do you go that far into it? And although I will say this much, the very beginning of the show, did you catch when they're doing the whole "Where am I in the village"? Number 2 doesn't say the new number 2. He just says, I am number 2.
Yes, I did notice that. And speaking of number 2, and this is the thing that bugs me, is this is a number 2 who we see again.
As number 2.
As number 2.
Okay.
He is back in The General, the episode called The General.
Oh, I always love The General.
Or should I say that he's back in A, B, and C. The General is actually filmed before A, B, and C, but shown after. But there are episodes that were shown in the middle between these two. So it's just someone watching it then and not knowing anything at all about what production order is or anything like that at all. To them, this number 2 would appear and then disappear and then come back with no explanation.
See, and that then is because it would make more sense the way he's acting so nervously here in this episode if the general came first.
I agree. I just, it's a modern fan problem because we're so used to knowing so much about these, shows that are produced now and that episodes are shown in the order that they're shot and things like that. This was just a weird thing. I really love to hear from the producers and everybody of they filmed all the episodes, presumably, or most of them, and then they just kind of shuffled them around. and what was their criteria in terms of how they chose which ones to show? And you know what? Nobody probably said, "Oh, that won't make any sense to viewers if this number 2 appears and then disappears." There's let's see, 1, 2. There's 2 episodes in between ABC and the General. So and then this number 2, because be honest with me now, and we'll get into this more. You would not expect this number 2 to come back after this episode.
Not the way that the director, who is, if it means anything to anybody, Pat Jackson, not the way the director sets this up, because there is that underlying tension throughout the entire story as he's trying to break number 2. And we see it, like he even lines up the shots. What's always in the foreground? The red phone. And he gets the call from whomever that is. Is it number 1? Is it a superior? What's going on? I loved also the juxtaposition with the phone and the milk. Because you know why he's drinking so much milk.
Yeah, he's got an ulcer.
Yeah.
I'm presuming that's number 1. In fact, what I was going to say to you is that number 1 figures fairly prominently in this episode for not actually being there. His or her or its presence is very much felt, and exactly what you say. That phone is the stand-in for number 1. So again, I'm going back to it that number 2, in the order that these were broadcast, that this number 2 would come back or still be there after the events of this episode is a little amazing to me, because he's in deep doo-doo by the end of this, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely, because he made a lot of promises in this episode that he didn't keep.
And here's the other thing. This is shown as the 3rd episode, but the heat is really on in this one to break number 6.
Right.
Again, this one would make much more sense showing it much later on, because things would be ratcheted up by that point, that they've gone a considerable amount of time without breaking him. And by God, they better break him now, and get this done with. So, but here it is. It's shown as the 3rd episode, and then that number 2 comes back. Well, though in reality we know that the General actually is before this one.
Right. By the way, that number 2 is Colin Gordon, and there's our Doctor Who connection for this episode. He played the Commandant in the Patrick Troughton 1968 series, The Faceless Ones. So.
Oh, very cool. I like him. I mean, I don't have anything, against him.
No, not at all.
I like him. And he does a good job of being nervous, of not looking forward to getting that phone call, and the milk drinking is very fun too.
Yes. It is. It's a nice touch. Before we dive into this, now, I have to apologize to everybody first that, the episodes have slowed down. They are going to pick up again. I got a little work-related tie-up there. I always like to pull back the curtain and explain myself to people. But in the course of watching this episode and talking with Jim about Secret Agent, Danger Man, the last time, I did a little looking. If you want to watch Danger Man, the entire series is on Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime. The first 2 seasons are on Tubi. By the way, The Prisoner also is available to stream on Amazon Prime. I think it's on Tubi, and it's also on Shout Factory, so you can catch it there. And the reason I point out all this is because in doing it, I started watching a few episodes when I had a free moment and just wanted to, especially since they're half-hour episodes the first season, and I started finding some really interesting things.
Wait a minute. You have a free moment?
Well, I had it for like in the evening before going to bed as a way to sort of just, because I got the stuff I was doing for my work. It was video related projects for my school, and it was intense because you want to get this right because it's like a virtual graduation, a virtual sports awards ceremony. You want to get them right because the kids are at home, and if you screw this up, there's all hell to pay. So, but like before heading to bed, I'd watch an episode, and it's interesting to see because you mentioned, Jim, that the format was changed at one point. It went beyond just a simple, because the first season is half hour. John Drake is American.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
He's American. But then what happened was that the show was canceled after one season. A couple of years later, like literally 3 years later, the show gets brought back because of the popularity of James Bond and the movies. So they're like, hey, we want to do this. And McGowan was in. They do 2 more seasons, 2 and 3. And now the show is expanded to an hour. Now John Drake is British. So he could, because let me tell you something. He had a terrible American accent. I
was going to ask, how was his American accent?
He kept slipping. He tried. He really tried. I don't know what they were thinking in making him American, but whatever, So the next 2 seasons, everything's going fine there. He's doing the hour-long show. The 4th season comes along. Now it becomes a color show. They only produce 2 episodes. And then suddenly, and according to Wikipedia, this is the way they worded it, he resigns from the show saying, I'm going off to do The Prisoner.
Right.
Is the
fascinating story.
Is The Prisoner, again, like here I am, like, we're the prisoner. Was he the prisoner stuck in this show that maybe he didn't want to do anymore? And he just walked away. And it's like, I'm not going to explain myself other than saying I'm doing another show. And that should be enough. Because the show was popular. And they produced 2 color episodes, which then did get shown, but they got shown as replacement episodes in England when The Prisoner wasn't airing, because the production of The Prisoner sometimes meant that he didn't hit his, marks for dates due for episodes. So they were like, put in one of those 2 episodes, put the other one in. Very strange.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is.
It is.
Imagine doing all this kind of stuff these days. That would be.
Oh, you mean like somebody not hitting their mark with a podcast, getting it out on that?
Yeah, and then just sticking in some old junk. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Where am I?
In the village.
What do you want?
Information.
Whose side are you on?
That would be telling. We want information. Information. Information.
You won't get it.
By hook or by crook, we will.
Who are you?
I am number 2.
Who is number 1?
You are number 6.
I am not a number. I am a free man.
So let's talk about this episode. It's called A, B, and C. It aired October 13th, 1967 in England, June 15th, 1968 in the United States. I gotta say, too, there's something else, too. And I never caught this before. I mentioned he says, I am number 2, but also there's the delivery. He's not as menacing when he says, I am number 2. He becomes more menacing as it comes on. His laugh is one of the best laughs I've ever heard.
I thought I thought the laugh was a bit over the top. Like I thought he was trying too hard because he's real low key for the most part, and then he has to do the evil laugh, and I thought he was going fairly overboard with the laugh. But okay, I won't argue with you.
No, I mean, I just it worked for me because everything else was a little too low key. Maybe that's what. Maybe you're right there. Maybe it is a bit much, especially since everything else was.
He might have felt kind of even self-conscious about doing that laugh, and then just went too far into it.
Right. Yeah. Now we have already mentioned the show opens with him, number 2, in his house, in his control room area there, and we see it already that he's getting it from the top. And that was the other thing too. That phone, it was red. Okay, way to go there. We know it's the red phone, but not only that, it's a bigger phone than any other phone on his desk.
And I don't think it's been seen. It wasn't. That phone wasn't seen in Arrival or Chimes of Big Ben.
No, I don't think so.
No.
But now he's under the microscope. He's got to get this thing done, and it's not working. So he places a call to number 14, the scientist, and he wants these experiments she's been working on with animals to proceed. We don't know what the experiment is yet. She points out, I don't know if we're ready for this, but there's no choice. You have to go ahead and do this. And I thought this was really interesting. The first 2 episodes, we always get a little bit of something with the prisoner, in some way, whether he's walking the village, talking to a person, going to number 2 directly. No preamble here. It's a dark and stormy night, and he is brought in, already sedated, ready for the experiment.
It's a very interesting way that he is brought into this episode, and I think it's just one more thing that makes this episode stand out. I was intrigued by the talk of number 2, that in his opinion, they have to find out what they're going to find out, and number 2's opinion is that number 6 sold out or was going to sell out. Mm-hmm. That was why he resigned.
Well, it's definitely a plausible reason.
Yeah, but what gets me is this idea that they seem to know so much about this guy, but then in some ways they don't really know about this guy. Like, number 2 is saying, like, my theory basically is that he was going to sell out, and I thought, even after you've read everything about him, you have the dossier just like all the number 2s do, and you still think that this guy was going to sell out. I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. Like, well, what would make you think that he, was going to sell out?
Yeah, and for that matter, if this is the 11th episode produced, you didn't come up with this idea as an angle until then?
Yeah, right.
So in some ways, that makes it work better in that regard, that it's closer earlier on in the series. But again, we have the general where we see him again.
Yeah.
So number 14 demonstrates to number 2 how she's able to transmit the prisoner's thoughts onto a screen as images. And as we can see here, his thoughts are just constantly about his resignation.
Yeah, right. We get this wonderful, that scene over and over and over.
Yep, exactly. She has, though, also something else. It's more than just having, his dreams of sorts, his thoughts, his subconscious projecting. She has an ability to manipulate them so that he starts thinking of other things. And she does this with this drug she's got that she wants to administer, coincidentally enough, in 3 parts.
This whole thing is handled really well, and for the time that that it was done in, and I really enjoy what they end up doing with this idea of we're in this hospital room basically, but then we're watching the screen, and that reality is going on, and the kind of the jumping back and forth, and that the one can affect the other, basically. And it gets really, really fun and cool by the end of this. But I just wanted to say at the outset here that I just thought this whole thing was handled really well about basically the 2 realities that are presented here.
The two realities, but I love how in the end the realities sort of merge.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean and what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. It gets really fun, and I can't when we get to that point to point out the very specific thing that I mean.
Right. There's a brief moment as she's administering the first drug that he opens his eyes, and the image changes on the screen to her as he's looking at her, which I also
Yeah.
thought was a nice little touch.
Yeah, very much so. But it's important also because then that sticks in his mind.
Right. Exactly, because that's going to play, shortly afterwards in another scene. He points out, number 2, that, basically at this point, the prisoner's life, comes down to 3 things, A, B, and C. And he's got these boxes labeled A, B, and C with the Albertus fonts there.
Of course.
I'm starting to become very fond of that font. I'm enjoying making up the little Facebook graphics that I'm making and using that font. I had to find it though. I had to download it separately for the software I use.
I did that many years ago too. To be able to use it, it wasn't part of the Word, the Microsoft Word that I was using. That I had to download a free font of it.
Right. Now the drug and the machine work together as they create in the prisoner's mind a night in Paris. And if I remember correctly, they said a year ago at a party.
See, that's there here again.
Right. I know what you're going to say.
Even, boy, I mean, this is the 11th episode, and they were saying that it was only a year in the past. So they're, wow, that's a tough one. I'm sorry, but... Anyway.
True. Then he mingles with the party guests for a few moments. He meets the hostess.
Darling. Hi.
I'm so happy you are here.
You look as wonderful as ever.
I should, but it costs. Oh, yeah. You look tired, darling. Things are bad?
No, not now. I'm starting a holiday.
Oh, the English holiday? Big boots and fishing sticks?
Not quite like that.
Where then?
Somewhere different, somewhere quiet, where I can think.
Oh, there is no quiet anywhere.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, darling. I'll come back soon.
Of course, yes.
And remember, you're mine.
Really?
Be horrible to other women.
I promise.
Oh, thank you.
See you later.
I think it's time we introduced A.
I caught her name quickly, but I couldn't, remember it. Because it was said so fast, and she's never referred to again by her name. But
I felt like she was, but okay, she's an interesting character.
She is.
And I like it because he gets to do his verbal fencing again, but with her, it's more flirting, I guess, than anything. But it's fun. Like I said, we're on familiar ground here with spy movies and spy TV shows of this party, and he's in a tux and he's kind of looking around and the women and all of that. It very familiar ground.
Right. I mean, like you said, at first I thought, hey, and you say 11th episode, I'm thinking, were they trying to just do another Secret Agent Danger Man episode? But then, the talk with him and the hostess is all about, his new life. You know, and such. So then it's like, okay, I see what's going on here. They're certainly using some of the elements, so maybe the audience feels familiar with it, but
yeah. Here's a really interesting thing, or at least I think so, and I wrote a note to myself about it, is when it gets into the whole party thing and they're talking about him and all, and it really starts to get going, it made me think about, again, what number 6 was. And I wrote, is he a secret agent? Pardon me, was he a secret agent? Or was he a politician? If you listen to them talking and you really kind of absorb it, it's there. There's very little else that he could have been. We don't know for a fact that he was a secret agent. an intelligence agent, a spy, even though that makes probably the most sense for this show. But I think he could have also been involved in politics too. Because, as far, you have to think of what kinds of positions would there be, number one, that you would know a lot of stuff, a lot of secrets, and that people would be concerned when you leave the job of what you know. And that really comes down to an intelligence agent, right? A spy, a secret agent, or a politician. I'm not sure what else there would be that he could have been, but it just made me, at this point, it really made me think about that. And again, I think what we're hearing about him, and he's saying, and other people are saying, that it could still be either one of those two things. Wouldn't it be fascinating, really, if it turned out that the character was a politician or is somehow involved in the government, but not as an agent?
It would. It would, it would explain, and it'll be interesting to see when we get to next week's episode, Free for All, if that could play into it a little more.
Yeah.
But
yeah, fascinating. Now that he can obviously handle himself very well, and I'm not saying about a politician wouldn't know judo or all that, but obviously number 6 can handle himself in a brouhaha.
Oh, and he will shortly, as we'll
he
see.
Shortly will, yes.
Yeah. In fact, two brouhahas, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, one a little shorter. They introduce the A elements. They take this, tape. It's like videotape, well, not videotape, film tape or computer tape, and they plug it into the computer there. And now it introduces, and we only know him as A. That's how he's billed on IMDb. But they introduce him. He too is a spy, a politician. He's similar to the prisoner. He says so. He goes, "We're very much alike, and yet you are different." And as he's talking to him, he's trying to sort of, and this is why you're different, because why are you resigning?
Yeah. Now, it seems to be very evident that this guy is a secret agent of some sort, a spy of some sort. And at the beginning, it's somewhat friendly or at least cordial, and then it starts to get a little edgy as they talk.
Right. Well, it gets edgy to the point where the prisoner leaves. And as he tries to leave and opens the door, interestingly enough, A seems to have beat him to the outside, got his coat on, and, has a couple of men grab him and take him to a car where they drive off.
Well, in a way, that's part of the surreal aspect. In real life, that guy probably couldn't have gotten out there that quick.
Absolutely.
We know, or we have to, or this reminds us that this is not really happening.
The thing is, except for the very ending, the rest of the sequences are never that surreal.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Yep.
That's the only thing I thought was a little much. Because I thought it was going to be trippy throughout. At the very end, and there's some really good surreal moments at the very end, which we'll get into.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, very much so.
So he, like I said, they drive off in the car. They pull into this courtyard area where they all get out. And before, I guess, any sort of interrogation can go on, the prisoner cuts loose, fights off A and another man, taking them both down, and then leaving with a quick "be seeing you."
Yes.
I loved it. I loved it. Because again, and it sort of speaks to that, well, we need a fight.
Yeah. No problem. That's good.
So since he's, left, and this was the other thing too. I don't remember if it was here, but I know later on she mentions it. he burns out the drug. There's like a certain point, it's like, well, we can't go back and continue because the drug is burned out. So
Correct. Right.
number 14 wants to wait 24 hours to give the prisoner a chance to rest, which I get all that. And that plays up later on because if it's 24 hours, that means there's only 2 days left. So number 2 later on in a phone conversation with the higher up says, 2 days, you'll have your answer. No more than 2 days. But the thing is that they let him go back to his home and they let him wake up the next morning there.
Right.
I don't know. I would have thought they would have held on to him, but instead, I guess they figured, it'll all just seem like a dream to him when he wakes up the next morning.
It's kind of optimistic. Yeah. He does see the needle mark though.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He does see the needle mark. And there's this great bit, later on with number 2 and the needle mark that I liked a lot. Couple of takeaways too. At the end of the scene, when number 14 says again, I want to wait the 24 hours. Number 2 has to give in, and as he does, he stares at. There's a red phone there in the lab too, a big one.
Right.
Which I
guess we're supposed to think that number 2 is being reckless because he's under the gun, because they're not really, they're not really doing much of anything to hide the fact of what they're doing from number 6. I mean, as far as like the needle mark being very evident, and he knows how clever number 6 is, and that number 6 is not going to sit still for anything like this. So in a way, number 2 just does himself in, really.
Yeah. And so he wakes up the next morning. Like I said, he sees the puncture wound from the needle from the night before. And I love this. I don't know why it struck me now. I'm sure other people have brought it up before. He's in his like living room area, I guess, and there's a lava lamp in the background. And I thought immediately, because we don't get Rover in this episode at all.
No,
but I thought of Rover.
It really wouldn't have worked.
Right.
I don't know how they could have fit Rover into this, but yeah, I really love the lava lamp there because I guess that is Rover basically.
Right. Well, there was this was not an escape episode. This was entirely get the information. Get the information.
Exactly right.
Yeah. That was the focus. I mean, the last episode, The Chimes of Big Ben, was about that, but it was also, it really wasn't about escape. It was about manipulating him into thinking he could escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made a note because there's something that comes up here, and I made a note about it because I think it was very interesting. We learn in this episode that numbers in the village are reused.
Yes, they are, because the prisoner points out when he sees number 14 later. First he sees her buying flowers, and then he walks up to her later and she's reading the newspaper, and he points out number 14 a week before was an old woman in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I thought that was very, very interesting that the numbers get reused. So that makes you want to know, was there a number 6 before him? Probably. I'd like to think that they didn't skip over numbers as they were doling them out.
Right.
I don't know if we ever see a number 3 in the show.
I don't know.
Yeah, because that's pretty high up, right?
Right. Right.
But yeah, it was just a fun little thing. Like, oh wow, and so they recycle the numbers.
They recycle the numbers. By the way, did you also catch? Like I said, she's reading the paper number 14 when the prisoner walks up to her. Did you catch the headline?
Yeah, I did. And don't get me going.
Because it's not a complete headline. You got to finish it up yourself. And I think the word is that they were trying to say there is finished.
Yeah. Don't get me going on this order of things thing.
Because I was like fascinated with that. I'm like, it goes, is number 2. And I'm like, F-I. And that's all I could make out.
Yeah.
That's all I could make out. And I was like, is he finished? Well, clearly he's not because he's back for the general.
That's right. Sort of.
Sort of. Oh. Did you also catch that as he's sitting there talking to number 14, at one point she says, "And you are," or something like that? The look on his face, there's two ways you could read it. It could be painful that he has to refer to himself that way because also he doesn't want to give away his real name. Or you could look at it as, yeah, what the hell number am I again? Sort of like he had to think about it a moment because he doesn't think of himself as number 6.
It is that. To me, that is, you're right. I think that it's what it is he doesn't think of himself like that, and he doesn't like to say that because in a way that's like giving in, but he's also not going to use his real name either. So yeah, it's another very interesting little moment.
Yeah. So then he heads off to number 2's place. And, this is our only time we see the two of them in this setting here. And I always love the little tete-a-tete between him and whoever the number 2 is at the time. And this one works really well.
Come in, my dear fellow. Come and sit down.
I'm not tired. I slept well.
Good. We don't seem to have seen a lot of each other.
I haven't seen very much of you.
I don't spend all my time spying.
Don't you? Your predecessors did.
I have other things to do. Now, all this nonsense about why you resigned. If people can't chuck up a job, things have come to a pretty pass. Do sit down.
I'm still not tired.
In that case, perhaps you'd pour me out some milk. I didn't have a very good night. Thanks.
A pleasure. Come in.
Thank you. Milk is the perfect food. It creates good temper. Would you like some?
My temper's fine. Anyone who had nothing to hide would ask where I got it.
Where did you get it, number 6?
In my sleep.
Oh, you must have been restless. Perhaps you need a checkup.
I have a favorite doctor.
Really?
Number 14.
Yeah, there's this. It's always some of the best stuff, and like I've said before, in Arrival and Chimes of Big Ben, it's that verbal fencing that I just live for. And when the writing is very crisp and clever, and you get all that back and forth, it can be really, really fun.
Yep. The thing where number 2 is like, we don't see much of each other, and he goes, "Oh, I don't see much of you." The prisoner said,
yeah.
Which is really good. And then a little further down the line, as he's handing number 2 the glass of milk, he makes sure that puncture wound is visible. And then he says, "Anyone with nothing to hide would ask where I got that." Loved it.
Yeah, very, very much so. The way he bends his wrist back, and practically shoves it in his face.
Yep. And the parting shot as he leaves when he says, "My favorite doctor is number 14.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just brilliant. Just
it's good stuff.
It is. And then of course that leads to, again, the phone. And like I said, the placement of the phone and the picture of milk as he picks up and says, 2 days. It'll be done in 2 days. So yeah. Nice. I mean, just such nice little touches. Later, we see the maid. Now, didn't we see that maid before already?
I don't think it's the same maid.
It's not the same one in Arrival that he hollers at because she's much younger.
Yeah,
I thought
right.
we saw her in the Chimes of Big Ben. Maybe I'm wrong.
Huh. Well, there's a lot of time between that was Chimes of Big Ben was 5th in production, and A, B, and C is 11th in production. So I don't know. I'd have to look that one up.
It's interesting though because he's basically got turn down service there because she's there it's nighttime. She's made him a cup of tea before bed.
Yeah.
I little things like that. I like. How does that work? Is he paying her to be his maid? Is that part like? Does he pay his work units to her or what?
Why he's not on guard though, and then he drinks the tea without thinking.
Right.
And then of course it's drugged.
Right.
He's smarter than that.
Right.
He gets what he deserves then this time around, as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. Well, it's funny because this time around he gets what he deserves, right? The next time around, he thinks he outsmarts them, and I love the way they get him.
Yeah. Yes, very much so.
Oh. So he's brought back that night. They go through, he's back at the party, and this time they introduce B, this blonde woman. Was she Soviet?
I don't know, but what I wrote down was she is very clearly a spy.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no doubt in with this one.
Right.
And then remember also, the A, B, and C were determined to be very important figures. And I would love to know how that was determined and what their place in number 6's life really was.
I don't know.
Because I think what we have to remember, and we tend to forget because we're so deep into these vignettes, is that this is not real.
Right. They're not real. It's not real, but these are real people in his life. He's known them at some point or something like them, even if they're not the real people.
The fascinating thing also, two things, sorry. Number one, did this party actually happen? And if it did, is it between two scenes of the opening? But I don't think it is. If I remember this correctly, when he goes to the party, he's already resigned, right?
Yeah, I believe so. No,
okay.
he could. Well, yeah, all right. I see what you're saying. Between two scenes in the opening credits. Yeah.
Yeah. But he hasn't tried to leave yet. I think there's some talk about what he's asked, what is he going to do? And I think he says, like, go on a holiday or whatever.
See, if you look at the opening credits, he's followed from the moment he leaves.
Yeah.
Wherever. I don't. So, this has got to be.
Again, whether or not this party really did happen in the real world is kind of up for grabs.
Right.
But they're suggesting that this happens after he gives his letter of resignation, because I don't think he would have, if he hasn't yet delivered that resignation letter, I don't think anybody else would have known. It seems very, very obviously in that opening sequence, it's very intense. He's not happy. The way he's walking down the corridor, throws open the doors, slaps the letter down, bangs on the table, and all of that. He's mad, you know. Like, whatever happened has very recently happened. Whatever it was that made him resign.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is that the second night of the process that 14 and 2 are doing to him, it picks up after the encounter with A. It could have just rebooted, but if I understand it correctly, it's actually picking up after he has his, encounter with A. Am I right?
I think you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's another a very fascinating, fun, interesting little thing. It didn't have to. You would think that it would just sort of reboot and he'd come into the party for the first time again, but it's not. It just keeps going basically from where they left off.
It keeps going from where they left off, and it takes him a moment to remember A in the dream. You know, where then he suddenly whether it's a flood of memories, whatever, it's like, oh, I left him someplace. Because, she asks about him. And in fact, we find out that she, B, and A are enemies.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's an interesting web of story that's being woven here.
Right. Right. And the whole time he's talking to her, number 14 realizes that he's just a little too relaxed in his dream, but she sees that in reality, he's resisting.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because it's like you would think if he's resisting in reality, he'd be resisting more in the dream, but he just seems to go with the flow and take everything in until it comes to the point to resolving this scene. But
I really like, again, I'll say it again, the cause and effect of reality, which is the room, the medical room, and he's laying on a table and unconscious, and what we're watching, on the screen in his mind, and the cause and effect between the two.
Right. So the thing is, though, is that since he's resisting, and again, this is where the point where I said before, he's burning up the drug, she's got to work fast. So she has this theory, if she's able to manipulate the images in his brain, why not manipulate the words that he hears in his dream state?
The only way to manipulate his dreams is to get into them.
Is that possible?
I was wondering
What?
if we could put words into her mouth.
How?
We fed him with pictures. Why can't we feed him with sound?
But the voice. Would he hear yours or hers?
That's the danger. If he hears my voice, recognizes it, the shock will wake him. He'll see everything. We'll have failed.
We must make the most of this chance, or we'll never know if it was me.
Worst time to try anything. Just look at the state he's in.
Where's your scientific enthusiasm?
This gets really, really kind of devious and interesting and scary in a way that this is all one big, huge experiment. And they're dealing with like injecting a guy with a drug, hooking his brain up to this machine and tapes. And then, right there on the spot, she figures out that she can get on basically the phone and plug it into her device.
Yes.
And talk through B as if B is like a puppet.
Yes.
It's devious. That's the only word I can come up with. It's really devious and fun.
It's devious and fun. It's something that she's hypothesized in the past. Not sure if it'll work, and not sure, and I like this little bit, that her voice might come through instead in the dream, which would just ruin the whole thing.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it does work. I mean, she's able to, and B still has her voice. The thing is, though, is she just takes the wrong tact entirely by bringing up this whole thing that, if she could just go back with the information to her people, why he resigned as a bargaining chip to save her life. And he's kind of like, what?
Yeah. Well, even though 14 is being prompted by number 2, she's a medical person, basically, right?
Right.
She's not an actress. She's not necessarily clever enough with this sort of line of work to be able to think on the fly and say the things. And number 6 is just too damn smart.
Well, yeah.
And clever. And yeah, right. You're right. She gets on the wrong footing, and she starts saying and doing things that doesn't ring true with B.
Right. And then that gets interesting then too, because it's like, okay, she's manipulating that part of the dream state in that regard, but everything else is still happening that she has no control over, including her people showing up and, trying to fight the prisoner while one of them has a gun to her head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because it's like you don't have total control.
Right. Events are still going to play out the way they're going to play out.
And she did warn number 2 about that. I don't have that much control, or, because he was like, there was that little bit earlier on where he's like, where's number 2? Why haven't you brought her in yet, or something like that? And she's like, no, she'll show up. And then there's that whole cutesy thing with the letter and everything that he gets.
Yeah. This whole thing speaks to the desperation of the situation, of number 2's desperation.
Yes.
It's all very experimental, you can't control everything, and you obviously can't even control some of the bigger things. and it starts going wrong. It starts going poorly.
Yep. And, he gives her a chance, though. He asks her questions about, her personal life, about her son and such. And, of course, number 14 can't answer these questions. So, he basically walks out of the scene and again, breaks the whole spell.
Yeah.
Where, again, we see the red phone in the, the constant reminder, the tension is on for number 2. Now, here's the thing. The first 2 episodes clearly are prisoner centric. Was this more of a story about number 2 than it was about the prisoner?
I'm going to give you that. And I think my brain was actually headed down that road. And I'm glad that you said that because I will give you that. It's fascinating. It is more about number 2. We learn more about his character really than anything.
Right.
Number 6, we're not necessarily learning anything new about him, but we most definitely are about number 2. I really like number 14 as a character. I would like to have seen her in more episodes.
Yeah.
Because she is working as for the bad guys, but like a true medical person, she's devoted to her work. I think that something really interesting could have been grown there with her character. But going back to what you're saying, I totally agree with you. It is number 2 centric. And you know what? I will say it. I'll go out on a limb and say this. I do feel some sympathy for him.
Oh, I do too.
With the damn phone's going to ring again.
Yep.
And he's not making any progress, and we assume that his life is on the line, not just losing his job. We assume that it's his life.
And which then would lead to a very desperate measures that he goes through.
Yes, yeah. At this point, things then get really good.
It does, because the prisoner wakes up the next morning. He sees the wound again. He goes for a walk and he sees number 14, so he follows her to just I guess that would be just outside the village, which I thought was interesting too. The whole time he's following, not one camera picked him up.
Yeah, it's a little sloppy maybe as far as the writing goes, but it really is more that number 2's just being sloppy, and she is too. Again, number 14 is not a spy. She's not in the intelligence service. She's not a cloak and dagger sort of person. She's doing her job as well as she can. And she's not trying to hide, she's not sneaking around. But yeah, why isn't he being, picked up on that? Number 2 is just being very sloppy. You would think that he would tell Control to be right on number 6.
Yeah.
This is a delicate time, a desperate time. But we can't afford any slip-ups here.
But see, that's why I come back to why the hell did they let him go home and wake up in his own bed?
Right.
It just, they could have kept him.
Right. You know what? Like, he should have been drugged completely and just put under, just be there and ready to, for the next time that they can do the next tape,
Yeah, exactly. It just that didn't make sense. And it allowed him then to follow her, like I said, basically to the entrance of this lab. It's a like a small hillside area there, and there's a sliding door. She walks in. He can't get in that way, but he manages to find the air vent and climb inside anyway.
Yeah. I made a note to myself at this point when he gets into her, laboratory or whatever it is. And I wrote, the dome room is used for everything. Yes. They got a lot of use out of that. They use it for how many different rooms in the village.
And
it's funny to me.
It's funny, but I also thought, and again, this director really knew how to make you feel like it was still something different. I mean, I knew it as soon as the door opened,
yeah.
because different angles and everything with the use of the room.
Yeah, no, he really closed it in.
Yes.
The way the walls that they put up and everything. No, it gives you, it's much more closed in. But I'm just laughing, I mean, they had that big dome room and they made use of it. They made good use of it.
Yep, exactly.
It's all about redressing sets.
It certainly is. Yep.
Yeah.
It certainly is. So he gets into the lab, and it's interesting, he covers the room, looks around, he finds the party tape, he finds the ABC boxes and looks inside, and we see that there's no picture for C. There's no tape either, if I remember correctly, for C. I don't think there was a tape.
I know there's no photo, but there's papers.
There's papers, yes.
Which he doesn't bother to read.
No, he doesn't.
But as we'll find out, there's good reason why, there's not a photo in there. But I don't remember about there being a tape or not.
I don't remember because it stood out in the box because it was also in a red canister. So
yeah,
I noticed that. He also finds the last of the drugs, which he then proceeds to dilute.
Yeah, which really gave me the heebie-jeebies because what is he diluting it with? Is it just water?
Well, one would assume it is. He never sniffs it, never samples it. He just takes it and adds it into the mix. Yeah.
Okay, that bugs me. Like, isn't it I know it's dangerous to inject air into your veins, but I don't know, would injecting water into you, I don't like it. Whatever he's doing, I don't like it. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it allows him then to get the upper hand once he's put under. I thought it was interesting that he was willing to allow it to happen. To see it to its conclusion.
That's the scariest thing of all.
Right.
Like he's gonna beat them at their own game, but what he has to do to be able to do that.
Yep. And did you also notice the penny farthing by crest above the door?
I don't know if I did or not.
I thought that was fascinating.
Say I didn't.
I thought it was fascinating because to me it's like, okay, that's an odd place to put that and such, but okay.
Yeah.
He, then puts everything back where it belongs, leaves.
And he's careful about that. There's a funny tiny little thing when he's putting those book things back that he kind of checks to make sure he's putting them back in the right order.
Yep. And he leaves. Now, the next scene is just a charming... I don't know. I loved it because there's number 2. Now, finally, he sees the prisoner walking.
I couldn't sleep. What's that number 6 doing? He's always walking. Irritating man. Doesn't he ever get tired?
Be seeing you.
No, I'll be seeing you.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Well, he's completely on edge at this point.
Yes. Yeah, you notice his hair is becoming more and more disheveled as the episode goes on.
Yeah. Well, he's not sleeping, obviously.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So that night, he's got the tea. He heads over to the sink and he pours it down the drain, thinking he's so got them now. And then he pours himself a glass of water. I love it. I'm sorry. That was just funny because then it's like, oh, the water's drugged.
Well, okay.
Tap water.
I was confused. I'm confused. Maybe I'm just being dense. I thought maybe he was faking being drugged.
But wouldn't you just do that thing with the tea and drop that glass?
I guess. I don't know. Why did they have the water drugged? drugged.
And was it only to his house, or was the entire
Yeah.
village drugged now?
Right, right. I mean, did somebody assume or thought it was a very strong possibility that he wouldn't drink the tea? I guess maybe so, because he would. They probably thought he would have figured out that's how they got him the night before.
Right.
So let's drug the water. I don't know. I don't know what the. It's just. Yeah, it is funny. But I kind of thought that he was just faking it after drinking the water. But okay, whatever. They get him.
Right. So he's brought back, put under again, and he's back at the party. Now, as we said.
Wait.
Yes.
Not only that, but it's a dreamy party.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. This is now where things seem to be. And I'm wondering, is that because of the fact that he's controlling things a little more?
Yeah. I really like the music that's playing at this point. You're a music in television episodes guy.
Okay.
You always brought that up during Batman and the Green Hornet, and I thought of that when this music was playing. This is, in so many TV shows, and especially at this time, there's like fake rock and roll that TV shows used to use.
Oh, sure.
Meaning it wasn't any real, group or anything like that. And it was some sort of an approximation that the music director of the show would use. It's, sometimes it was like no self-respecting youngster would have, have accepted that as real, rock and roll. But actually this was good. Whatever that tune was, I enjoyed that or whatever. And it just cracks me up when Patrick McGowan goes,
It's creamy! This is a creamy party!
oh, my wife and I used to say that all the time. It's just the way he delivers it. It's just so funny. Like, okay, Patrick McGowan, you have to act kind of like you're high or something, for a guy who probably had no idea what it was like to be high, it's just a funny little thing in there or whatever. But things are now very surreal.
Very, very surreal. And just like the whole thing, because here's the thing, like we said, there's no details about C other than that piece of paper. And all it says is that he or she is French.
Yeah.
That's all they got on this. So, of course, now it's like, well, we don't know who we're looking for. We don't know who, because this has got to be it. C, number 2 is like, C has got to be the one then. This is who he sells out to and all this. Our hostess, chats it up with the prisoner briefly, introduces her to another woman who gives him, and again, all of this is weird, gives him a diamond earring, tells him to bet on number 6 in roulette.
Number 6,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which wins.
Mm-hmm.
But when he turns around to say, hey, whatever, the woman's gone.
Yep.
He's given a large key. And then the hostess walks up and she's holding another large key.
Yeah.
And it turns out the hostess is RC.
Yeah. And number 2's reaction is great. He's really surprised.
But see, this is where also, because he's really surprised, but also you were saying before, did this party happen? He says, we must bring her to the village.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. What another, fascinating thing there. And he's assuming that that's real.
True. Okay. That's fair. True.
And what we're assuming now that this is, to us, the audience, this is number 6 doing all of this, right?
Right.
Right. Unless number 6 did know that this woman, I don't think he would have given her away like that, though. It has to all be manipulated. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a fun thing. We have to bring her to the village.
Yeah, true. True. I like that. But the thing is, here's the interesting thing. They take the keys, they walk they drive, actually. No, actually, they didn't even drive. They start walking towards, the exit, because she's like, this will open a door. But the thing is, the prisoner collapses and the image disappears. Now, my question to you is this. I know she starts giving him oxygen, number 14 does. Did she also give him some more of the drug?
I don't think she had any more, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. She did, true. I'm just thinking it can't just have been as simple as revive him with some oxygen and suddenly the dream because the dream picks up then after that, and now they're in the car, and she's going to take him to...
John, I don't think there's any real science behind any of this. Just go with it. You've gotten this far into the episode. Don't start nitpicking it now.
Oh, man. She wants to take him to the person he's actually supposed to give this information, and he's got it in an envelope. And that's the thing, because that's the other thing now. Number 2's fascinating. He's got the information. What's the information? Who's she bringing him to? Is this D? Is there a D element to this?
Is there a D? Yeah. Yeah.
And she drives him to what looks like a church. At least, you don't see the whole thing, but they're big cathedral-like doors that the keys fit into. They turn the thing, and the doors part to reveal a Parisian street, and the hostess is gone.
Yeah. Right.
So he steps out into the street, and there he meets D, this masked man. I mean, when I say masked, he is covered in, I guess, a stocking or something.
I am glad you could come. Where are you? It doesn't matter. I want to see you. I've been dying to see you. It won't make any difference. People who hide are afraid.
I didn't know you existed.
It is often the case with really important people. Anonymity is the best disguise.
You are afraid. This is very important to me.
It is only a commodity.
No. It's my future.
You belong to me now. You were told there is no return.
Not until I know who you are. I've never liked secrets.
Oh, I want to see him.
No one will ever see me.
I will. I want to know who I'm selling out to. We must all know.
All? Aren't you alone?
No. But you are.
Violence will do no good.
It relieves the feelings.
Does it matter?
It does to them. We mustn't disappoint them. The people who are watching. I knew, of course. Now, show them. See?
I liked, and this is when you're like, okay, now I realize he's in control of the situation, because the prisoner says, we want to know who you are.
Right.
Right. Which says, it's not just me, it's everybody else. Number 14, number 2, everybody watching. Yeah. We want to know who you are.
And the walls between reality and the theater of the mind start to break down.
Right. Exactly.
And it starts to get really good.
He pulls off the mask, revealing that it's number 2.
Number 2. It's great. It's great. It really is.
It is. It is. And in case you didn't know it, then number 14 goes, he knew all along. It's like, okay, we get it.
And then
this is great. He turns around, goes back to the doors, opens them up to reveal the village.
The village, right? This is This is coming up to probably my favorite scene in this entire episode.
And it's funny because at first you think, is this really happening? And the director again does a great job of showing him walking back to the lab, getting down below, coming in to, the lab area there. But then you pull back or cut away or whatever, and you see he's still lying on the table. They're still watching. They're watching him entering the lab where they are also in the dream state.
It's this wonderful, delicious moment where our two main people, 14 and 2, are so befuddled, so off their pins, so rocked by everything that they lose complete sense of what is real and what is not real. My most favorite scene is they watching on the screen as number 6 comes up to the doors to the room that they're in.
Right.
And they turn and look at the doors, expecting him to come walk, to come
it's like
through
he's
them.
lying right there in front of you. Why are you looking at the door?
I know, but that's so wonderful, and it's done so wonderfully because we, the audience, for a split second, start to buy it. We almost expect to see him come through the door.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But no, he's laying on the table. It's a wonderful moment. It's so cool and fun and done so well for that split second when everybody, we, them, everybody expects him to come walking through the door. But of course he's not because it's all happening on the screen.
Right.
In his mind.
Right.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Great stuff. And he walks up in the dream state. He walks up to number 2, hands him the envelope saying, "Oh, I forgot to give you this." Number 2 quickly opens it up, and inside are just all travel brochures.
Yeah.
He was going on a holiday. And he
really
spells it out. He says,
on a holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I really was.
Just wonderful.
And I wasn't selling out. That's not the reason I resigned.
So simple.
Yeah.
All that for that.
Yep.
And
then the best part, he walks over, lays down on the table. Again, it's like all coming together. And then we see the phone ring. Boom. Gates, prison cell, bang.
Boom, bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum.
Yep. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
Good
stuff.
This one didn't have as many plot problems, I think, compared to even the Chimes of Big Ben.
No, because we rationalized, and like I said, if there was a little bit of sloppiness about why weren't they tracking him as he was following number 14, again, you could just say everything is number 2 is so desperate and nervous and everything that he's just being really sloppy.
Right, but overall, so much happening, so much to jot down, and I was constantly stopping it. That was the only thing, was just, wow, this is really one where if you take your eye off it, you could lose track.
Oh yeah, I agree. Some of the best episodes, in my opinion, of this show is when number 6, turns it around on his jailers. It reminds me of Hammer into Anvil, which will be coming up later. It's a similar sort of thing where it's the prisoners in charge.
Right.
And not the warden.
Right. He kind of becomes number 2, right?
Essentially, yeah, right. And that is a very interesting thing because that will lead into the next episode.
Right.
Keep that in mind, listeners.
So anything else that we didn't get to cover on this that you wanted to talk about?
What else is there? I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I think we gave this one a good turn here. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Would definitely, one thing actually you got me thinking about, because we've been talking about order and stuff like that. I think when we are done with this, I think we should do one more episode afterwards where we just reveal what we think our order should be.
Okay.
Would you be up for that?
Sure, absolutely.
So start thinking about that, like placing the episodes out. You know what I mean? If you want to go with a certain, order that others have, but the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm like, yeah, this one works better here, and this one, and I'm curious to know when we get to the general, does he say the new number 2? And if he does, then guess what? The general should be first.
Yep.
Well,
look, I'll say it again. At the end of this one, A, B, and C, phone rings.
Yeah.
You know what happens.
He's done.
We know what happens.
He's done.
There's no way this number 2 is going to be allowed to continue.
Right. Why would you give him a
position.
second chance?
Yeah. I mean, to be kind, there's no, he's going to be put somewhere else in some other position, but no, we all know that he's done for. He failed miserably.
Right.
And yeah, there's just no way. So it's going to be weird when he's back in the general.
Right.
I owe you an apology.
An apology?
Yes. I forgot to give you this. A bargain's a bargain.
Don't put it, you fool! Open it! I must see what's in it.
He was going on holiday.
I wasn't selling out. That wasn't the reason I resigned.
I guess it's safe to say that's going to do it for another episode.
I think it's safe to say too.
Once Upon a Village podcast. Next time, we're going to get to finally the episode that, if I'm not mistaken, Jim, you think should be earlier in the run, Free For All.
Yeah, well, it was actually the second one produced, and the one that I mistakenly went ahead and watched after Arrival, thinking that was the order that we were doing, but it turned out it wasn't.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see if maybe your theories about him being a politician hold up here.
Okay.
How well does he play the political game?
Yep.
So that'll be coming along fairly shortly, because Jim and I are going to start catching up, and so we can get back into a weekly thing with this here. But until then, folks, thank you so much for listening.
Cards and letters.
Cards and letters. Send
your cards and letters.
Comments on the Facebook page, on the Twitter page, on the chronicrift.com page, or write us at chronicrift@gmail.com. Let us know what you're thinking of the podcast. So until next time, folks, this is number 2 saying, be seeing you.
Be seeing you.